I never wanted to tell this story, but if I don't, people like her will keep getting away with it. My name is Marcus Holt, and this isn't just about a lawsuit. It's about my daughter. The first warning came on a rainy Tuesday. A certified letter from the Pine Ridge Estates HOA, stamped urgent. Remove the non-compliant structure attached to your property within 72 hours, it read. My chest tightened. The structure was a handrail I'd installed along our front steps for my 9-year-old Ava, who'd lost most of her vision after a car accident 2 winters ago. The rail wasn't steel or fancy, just sanded oak bolted to concrete. But to Ava, it was the difference between walking to the school bus alone or needing me to grip her shoulder like a crutch. They approved this, my wife Julia whispered. She stood in the doorway, her knuckles white around the letter. We'd submitted the design twice. Paid the $200 aesthetic review fee, even got a thumbs up from the HOA's architecture committee. Or so we thought. The next morning, I stormed into the HOA office. Evelyn Shaw, the board president, didn't look up from her desk. Her office smelled like lavender and power. Everything about her was polished, marble cheekbones, a blazer tailored to look like armor. When she finally glanced at me, her smile was a flicker of pity. "Mr. Holt," she said, "the rail violates our colonial revival guidelines. It's jarring." Jarring? I choked out. My daughter needs it to walk. Evelyn slid a glossy photo across the desk, a close-up of our handrail. See these bolts? They're visible, and the wood grain clashes with your home's historic trim. She said, historic, like our subdivision wasn't built in 2005. We're happy to refer you to a contractor who can install something subtler. Subtle. Right. The contractor she recommended charged $4,000. I'd spent weeks building that rail myself, staining it the exact cedar shade as our shutters. But Evelyn's tone made it clear. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was a shakedown. That night, Julia found me sitting on the porch staring at the rail. Ava's laughter floated through the screen door. She was inside laughing at a cartoon, oblivious to the storm brewing. "What do we do?" Julia asked, her voice fraying. "We can't pay their fines, not after the medical bills." I didn't answer. Instead, I traced the groove in the wood where Ava's fingers gripped it every morning. The HOA had approved this. I had the email, but when I'd shown it to Evelyn, she'd blinked slowly and said, "There must be a mistake." 2 days later, the second letter arrived. "Failure to comply will result in a lien on your property." Julia crumpled to the kitchen floor, crying. Ava froze in the hallway, her cane tapping nervously against the wall. "Daddy," she said, her voice small, "are they going to take our house?" That's when I snapped. I drove back to Evelyn's office, but her assistant said she was unavailable. Outside, I spotted her climbing into a silver Mercedes with a man I recognized, David Cole, our neighbor 3 doors down, the one who'd complained about our noisy wind chimes last spring. They laughed as he handed her a folder, her manicured fingers brushing his. Suddenly, the mistake made sense. David had wanted our lot for years. His pool patio faced our backyard, and he'd offered to buy our house twice. "Tear it down, build a guest house," he'd said. I'd refused. Now he was cozy with the HOA president, and my family was drowning in fines. But I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a fighter. I was a mechanic who'd never won anything bigger than a $50 scratcher. Until I found the envelope. Tucked in our mailbox that night, no return address. Inside, a blurry photo of Evelyn and David at a diner, heads bent close. And a note. Check the HOA's financials. Page 62. The photo burned a hole in my pocket all night. I didn't tell Julia. She'd already started sleeping with Ava, her arm wrapped around our daughter like a seatbelt. "In case they come for us," she'd said. The next morning, I drove to the library and printed the HOA's latest financial report. a 200-page PDF hidden on their website. Page 62 was a maze of numbers, but one line jumped out. $18,500 paid to Cole Contracting LLC for landscaping services. David Cole's company. My hands went cold. Last summer, the HOA had fined half the neighborhood for unapproved lawn art, including a family with a tiny garden gnome. But David's backyard? A 10-foot marble fountain shaped like a naked angel. No fines, no letters. I called the number for Cole Contracting. A bored voice answered. Yeah, we handle tree trimming for Pine Ridge. What about the $18,500 landscaping job? I asked, trying to sound clueless. I'm looking to hire you. The guy snorted. We didn't do $18,000 worth of work there. Last job was mowing the clubhouse lawn. Took 2 hours. Click. I sat in my truck, engine off, staring at the financials. The math was simple. The HOA was funneling cash to David, and Evelyn was helping. But why target us? Then it hit me. Our property. David's McMansion was worth double the others. He'd hosted the HOA's Christmas party, bragging about his vision for Pine Ridge. A vision that didn't include a mechanic's rust bucket truck in the driveway or a blind girl's handrail ruining the vibe. That night, I confronted Julia. We need to sue. She stared at me like I'd grown horns. With what money? We're drowning, Marcus. The hospital bills, Ava's therapy. They approved the rail, I said, shoving the HOA's email in her face. Then they lied. If we back down, they'll keep coming. For the truck. For Ava's wind chimes. For everything. Julia's eyes filled. What if we lose? I didn't answer. I just hugged her, my chin resting on her head, and memorized the smell of her shampoo. Coconut. Like the beach we'd gone to before the accident. The anonymous tipster struck again. Another envelope appeared in our mailbox. No stamp, no postmark. Inside, a screenshot of text between Evelyn and David. Evelyn, he's digging. Call the inspector. David, already did. Health code violation incoming. Rats in the garage? Evelyn, make it believable. 10 minutes later, a gray sedan pulled up. A man in a cheap suit slapped a notice on our door. Complaint of rodent infestation. Inspection required. I blocked him with my body. We don't have rats, he smirked. We'll see. While he inspected our garage, Ava tugged my sleeve. Daddy, who's that? Nobody, sweetheart, I said, guiding her inside. But my pulse roared in my ears. This wasn't just about fines anymore. They were trying to brand us as the neighborhood freaks, the family with rats, the dad who neglected his disabled kid. The next clue came from an old lady in a floppy sun hat, Mrs. Rivera, who lived 2 streets over. She cornered me at the gas station, her voice a hiss. Check the HOA meeting minutes, April 12th. Why? She glanced around like someone might be listening. They voted to increase fees, but the money vanished. My son's a CPA. He says it's fraud. Why tell me? Her face softened. My grandson's autistic. They made us rip out his sensory swing last year. Said it lowered property values. She pressed a crumpled sticky note into my hand. Page 22. I didn't sleep. I drove to the 24-hour diner, ordered coffee, and scrolled through the HOA minutes. April 12th was a goldmine. Discussion. Revising community bylaws to prohibit excessive modifications for medical needs. Excessive, like a handrail, or a ramp, or a swing. The vote passed 5-2. Evelyn's name was first. By dawn, I had a plan. I called every family in Pine Ridge with a kid who had a disability, a parent in a wheelchair, a veteran with PTSD, anyone the HOA had bullied. Most hung up, but 3 agreed to meet. A single mom whose son had epilepsy, a retired Marine with a service dog, and Mrs. Rivera. We gathered in my garage, the fluorescent light flickering. Julia handed out dollar store cookies. Ava sat on the stairs, her cane across her lap, humming Taylor Swift. They're stealing from all of us, I said, spreading the financials on my workbench, and targeting anyone who doesn't fit their perfect neighborhood. But if we go to court together... The Marine, Rick, cut me off. Courts take years. I'm on a fixed income. I can't wait. The single mom, Nina, wiped her eyes. They threatened to report me to CPS last month. Said my son's meds were unsecured drugs. Mrs. Rivera slammed her fist on the bench. So what? We let them win? No, I said. We leak it to the news, to social media. Make it too big for them to bury. Silence. Then Rick grinned. I still have buddies at the Chicago Tribune. 2 days later, the lien notice came. Pay $12,000 in fines or vacate the property. Julia sobbed. Ava asked if we'd have to live in my truck. I almost cracked. Almost. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Rick. It's live. I clicked the link. There it was. Front page of the Tribune's website. Homeowners Association accused of targeting disabled residents in fraud scheme. The article named Evelyn, David, Pine Ridge. My hands shook as I read the comments, hundreds of them. This happened to my cousin. Evil people. Sue them into oblivion. At 3 a.m., headlights flooded our bedroom. A car idled at the curb. Evelyn's Mercedes. She didn't knock. Just stood on our porch, her silhouette sharp through the blinds. Waiting. Julia gripped my arm. Don't! But I opened the door. Evelyn's smile was gone. Her voice trembled. Take the article down, now, or I'll make sure you never see your daughter again. Evelyn's threat hung in the air like poison. For a second, I considered slamming the door, but then I saw the shadow behind her. David Cole, leaning against his car, arms crossed. His smirk glowed in the dark. You think a news article scares me? Evelyn hissed. I'll file a defamation suit so fast you'll lose that house in custody of Ava. Who do you think the courts believe? A mechanic with a messy yard? Or me? Julia's nails dug into my arm. Marcus, please. I stepped onto the porch, barefoot, the cold wood biting my soles. You approve the rail, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have proof. Evelyn's laugh was sharp. Proof of what? A typo in an email? Grow up. You're out of your depth. David called out from the driveway. Just take the ramp down, Holt. Save everyone the drama. Ava's voice piped up behind me. Daddy? Why's that lady here? Evelyn's mask slipped. She stared at Ava, small, vulnerable, clutching her stuffed dolphin. And for a heartbeat, I saw guilt flicker in her eyes. Then it vanished. Cute kid, she said flatly. Shame she'll have to switch schools. The door shut hard. Julia had pulled Ava away, but not before my daughter whispered, She's scary. The next 48 hours were a blur. The Tribune article went viral. News vans camped outside Pine Ridge. Strangers brought casseroles and yard signs. Support the Holts. But Evelyn wasn't idle. First, the HOA sued us for defamation. Then, Child Protective Services showed up, a woman in a stiff pantsuit asking Ava if she felt unsafe at home. Julia broke down when they demanded Ava's medical records. They're trying to prove we're neglecting her, she wept. But the worst blow came from Mrs. Rivera. She called me at midnight, crying. They threatened my grandson, said they'd report his therapy sessions as disturbances. I'm out, Marcus. I can't risk it. Our little coalition crumbled. Nina stopped returning texts. Rick ghosted us. The Marine who'd promised to fight to the death folded after the HOA towed his truck for expired tags. I was alone. Then he showed up. Daniel Lee, a lawyer in a wrinkled suit, cornered me at the gas station. I read the article, he said, handing me a coffee. I'll rep you pro bono. Why? He shrugged. My sister's in a wheelchair. Her HOA fined her for a ramp twice. She died before the case settled. He looked me dead in the eye. Don't let these parasites win. I signed his contract in the diner parking lot, my hands shaking. No more garage meetings, no more trusting strangers. Just Daniel, Julia, and a mountain of paperwork. They're using a loophole, Daniel explained. The ADA requires reasonable accommodations for disabilities, but HOAs can deny them if they claim financial burden. He tapped Evelyn's emails. But she approved your rail. That's a binding contract. We sue for breach, discrimination, and fraud. Fraud? He grinned. Those $18,500 payments to David's fake company? That's embezzlement. And I found more. He slid over a document. The HOA had paid $82,000 to Cole Contracting over 2 years. For tree trimming that never happened, clubhouse renovations that left mold in the walls, a security fence that was just chicken wire. David's laundering HOA funds, Daniel said, and Evelyn's getting a cut. We had a case, but Evelyn had claws. The day after we filed the lawsuit, someone slashed my truck tires. Julia found dead rats in our mailbox. At 3 a.m., prank callers whispered, "How's the blind girl sleeping?" Ava stopped using the handrail. "I don't like it anymore," she said, clinging to Julia's leg. "It's bad." That shattered me. The one thing I'd built to give her independence now terrified her. The final straw was the fire. I woke to smoke and the shrill scream of alarms. Julia was already dragging Ava outside, her nightgown singed. The garage, where I'd stored all the HOA evidence, was engulfed in flames. Firefighters found an empty gas can in our bushes. "Arson," one said, side-eyeing me. "You pissed someone off." Evelyn's text came at dawn. "Accidents happen. Drop the case." I stood in the charred wreckage, Ava's melted wind chimes dripping from the roof, and made a choice. Daniel's office, 8 a.m. "We're not backing down," I said. Julia glared at me. "They tried to burn us alive, Marcus." Daniel leaned forward. "We go public with the arson. Add attempted murder to the lawsuit, they'll fold." "Or escalate," Julia snapped. Ava tugged my sleeve. "Daddy, I don't want a new house. I want our house." I knelt, cupping her face. "Me too, baby. But some people, they don't care who they hurt." Her milky eyes filled with tears. "Like the bad lady?" "Yeah, like her." That afternoon, Daniel held a press conference. I stood beside him, Ava's hand in mine, and told the cameras everything. The fraud, the threats, the fire. Reporters gasped. Someone shouted, "Should HOAs have this much power?" Evelyn's Mercedes screeched into the lot. She marched toward me, heels cracking like gunshots, but cameras swarmed her. "Ms. Hart, did you order the arson? Are you targeting disabled children?" She froze, her face a mask of rage, and spat at me. "You're dead, Holt." The clip played on every news channel that night. At midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Unknown. Meet me at the clubhouse. Back door, come alone. I almost deleted it. But then a photo came through. Evelyn and David arguing in a parking garage. The timestamp was yesterday. Unknown, I can bury them, but you'll hate me for it. I didn't tell Julia about the text. She'd begged me not to go, and I couldn't risk her stopping me. Not when this might be the only way to end this. The Pine Ridge Clubhouse loomed in the dark, its colonial-style pillars lit by flickering security lights. I parked 2 blocks away, my hood pulled low, and crept through backyards. The air smelled like cut grass and dread. The back door was propped open with a brick. Inside, the pool glowed neon blue, casting shadows on the empty lounge chairs. "Over here." The voice came from the janitor's closet. A figure stepped out. Lena, Evelyn's assistant. The mousy woman who'd always avoided eye contact, who'd whispered, "I'm sorry," when handing me violation notices. Now her hands trembled as she shoved a USB drive into my palm. "Everything's on there," she said. Bank transfers, deleted emails, the fire order. It's enough to put them both in prison. I stared at her. Why help me? Her face crumpled. My brother. He's in a nursing home. Evelyn found out I used HOA funds to pay his bills. She blackmailed me into falsifying records, but last week she cut his power for noise complaints. He's on oxygen. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. I just want him to be safe. The weight of the USB drive felt like a grenade. What's the catch? She hesitated. The money trail leads to a councilman. Someone big. If you expose it, they'll come after you, not just lawsuits, worse. Why give it to me then? Because you're the only one stubborn enough to burn it all down. I hid the USB drive in Ava's teddy bear, stitching the seam back with shaking hands. Julia watched from the doorway, arms crossed. Where were you? Getting coffee, I lied. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Daniel called an hour later. The judge moved up the hearing. We're on in 3 days. What changed? Evelyn's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss, claiming insufficient evidence. He paused. They're desperate, which means we're close. I glanced at Ava, tracing the Braille book Julia had borrowed from the library. The little engine that could. We can't lose, I said. We won't. But Daniel's voice lacked its usual confidence. That night, I plugged in the USB drive. The files were worse than I imagined. Invoice 14, $25,000 for pest control at David's mansion. Email 62, Evelyn to David, make the Holt kid cry on camera. Sympathy dies with bratty behavior. Text, Councilman Hayes. Burn the evidence. I'll handle the cops. And photos, dozens of them. Evelyn and Councilman Hayes at a ski lodge laughing. David handing Hayes an envelope. Hayes' son driving a Porsche registered under coal contracting. Power, greed, a pyramid of lies. But one file froze my blood, a screenshot of Ava's school schedule. Highlighted, field trip Friday, Lincoln Park Zoo, departure 9:30 a.m. Attached note, accidents happen. I sprinted to Ava's room, waking her. You're staying home Friday. She rubbed her eyes. But the zoo? No! I snapped. Julia rushed in. Marcus, what's wrong? I showed her the file. Her scream woke the neighbors. 3 a.m., Daniel's apartment. He scrolled through the files, face pale. This goes beyond Pine Ridge. Hayes is connected to the mayor. If we expose this, they'll destroy us. So we do nothing? Julia shouted. Let them hurt Ava? Daniel turned to me. There's another way. Leak it anonymously. Let the media eat Hayes alive. But once it's out, we can't protect you. Ava's photo smiled up at me from the laptop. Her first day of school. Unicorn backpack strapped tight. Innocent. Unbroken. Do it, I said. By dawn, the files flooded the internet. Reddit threads, TikTok rants, news headlines. Corruption scandal rocks local government. Disabled child targeted in cover-up. Evelyn's mansion went up for sale by noon. David Cole was arrested at the golf course. Councilman Hayes held a press conference, resigning with a shaky, I regret any misunderstandings. But the text came anyway. Unknown, you shouldn't have done that. A van parked outside our house. No plates, engine running. Julia packed our bags. We're leaving, now. Ava clung to her stuffed bear, the USB drive still hidden inside. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, I said. But as I loaded the truck, headlights flooded the driveway. 2 men stepped out. Suits, no badges. Mr. Holt, one said. Councilman Hayes would like a word the men didn't have guns. At least none that I could see, but their silence was weapon enough. Get in the van, the taller one said. His partner stared past me, eyes dead. Julia slammed the front door open, Ava's hand clutched in hers. Leave us alone. Her voice cracked, raw with fear. The men didn't flinch. Councilman Hayes wants to resolve this. Quietly, the tall one said. For your kid's sake. Ava buried her face in Julia's leg. The USB drive in her bear felt like a bomb strapped to my chest. Resolve how? I said, stepping between them and my family. The man smiled, a thin, joyless slit. Drop the lawsuit, call the press, say you exaggerated. In return, Hayes makes your debts vanish, even throws in a trust fund for the girl. My throat tightened. A trust fund. Ava's surgeries, her school, her future. All paid for. No more ramen dinners. No more panic when the gas bill came. Julia's breath hitched. I didn't dare look at her. The man leaned closer, his cologne sour. Or we take the kid. Let the courts decide if you're fit to keep her. 1 hour later, we sat in the truck, parked outside a diner. Julia hadn't spoken since the men left. Ava slept in the back seat, her bear pressed to her cheek. We could run, Julia whispered. Change our names. Start over. And live in hiding forever? I said. Ava deserves better. She deserves to be alive. The words hung between us. I gripped the steering wheel in a Hayes offer clawing at my resolve. A trust fund. Safety. But Evelyn and David would walk. And in a year, they'd target another family. Another kid. What if we take the deal? Julia's voice broke. Stop fighting. I closed my eyes. Saw Ava's handrail reduced to ash. Saw Evelyn's smirk as she tore apart the next parent who dared to be imperfect. I can't, I said. Julia turned away, tears streaking her reflection in the window. Daniel's office, midnight. He scrolled through the USB files, jaw clenched. Hayes isn't bluffing. He's tied to a half-dozen shell companies. If we go to trial, he'll bury us in motions until we're bankrupt. So we lose. Not yet. Daniel leaned forward, eyes blazing. There's a whistleblower hearing downtown tomorrow. Federal investigators. If we testify, they'll kill us, I said flatly. They'll try. He slid a badge across the desk. FBI agent Carl Ruiz. He's been building a racketeering case against Hayes for years. Your evidence is the missing piece. I stared at the badge. Why trust me? Because you're the guy who turned a $10 handrail into a national scandal. He almost smiled. And Ruiz has a daughter like Ava. The hearing. They made us enter through the basement. Metal detectors, armed guards. Ava clung to Julia, her cane tapping nervously as we rode the elevator. Ruiz met us in a sterile hallway. Stay close, he said, and don't talk to anyone. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood panels, flickering lights. Councilman Hayes sat at the defendant's table, flanked by lawyers. When he spotted me, his smirk dissolved. The judge was a woman with silver hair and a voice like a gavel. Proceed. Ruiz handed over the USB drive. Your Honor, this evidence proves Councilman Hayes conspired to defraud Pine Ridge residents, intimidate witnesses, and endanger a child. Hayes' lawyer shot up. Objection! This evidence was obtained illegally. Sit down, the judge snapped. I exhaled. For the first time, Hayes looked afraid. Then the lights went out. Screams, glass shattering, a gunshot. Someone tackled me to the floor. Stay down, Ruiz hissed. Ava wailed. Daddy, where's Daddy? Flashlights cut through the dark. More gunfire. I crawled toward Ava's voice, my palms scraping broken glass. A hand yanked my collar. Hayes' breath reeked of mint and panic. You're dead, Holt, he spat. The fist cracked his jaw. Ruiz dragged him off me, cuffs clicking. Councilman Hayes, you're under arrest. The lights flickered on. Hayes' lawyer was gone. So was the USB drive. Parking garage, Ruiz cursed as he searched his car. They planted a jammer, killed the cameras before the hit. Julia rocked Ava in the back seat, both trembling. They'll come for us again, she whispered. My phone buzzed. Unknown. Check your mailbox. The mailbox held a shoebox wrapped in duct tape. Inside the USB drive, a burner phone, and a note. Hayes' men stole the copy. This is the original. Finish it. Lena. I didn't hesitate. Ruiz met us at a safe house. FBI agents swarming the perimeter. We've got Hayes in custody, he said, but Evelyn and David fled. They're desperate. I handed him the drive. And this. The trial lasted 3 days. Evelyn and David were arrested at a border checkpoint, suitcases stuffed with cash. Hayes' plea deal unraveled when the judge saw the photo of Ava's school schedule. Accidents happen. The HOA disbanded. Pine Ridge residents voted to dissolve it, hanging a banner over the clubhouse. Karen-free zone. And the lawsuit? $10,000 in damages. But the real victory was the email I got a week later. A forwarded message from the new neighborhood board. Request to install permanent handrail for Ava Holt. Approved epilogue. We didn't keep the money. Julia and I donated it to a disability rights group. Ava picked the name, the Unstoppable Rail Fund. David Cole got 5 years for fraud. Evelyn got 8. Hayes, 20, after the feds found bodies buried under his charity projects. As for Lena, she vanished. But last Christmas, a gift arrived, a wind chime shaped like a dolphin, Ava's favorite. The note read, "Tell her I'm sorry." Tonight, I'm sitting on our porch watching Ava race her new guide dog along the handrail. Julia leans against me, her laughter soft. "You did it," she says. "We did," I correct her. Ava trips, giggles, and gets back up. No fear, no fines. Just a kid being a kid. Some stories shouldn't stay secret.